Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Just move it up a little bit. Okay. So, good to go? Yep. Okay, it's a few people after lunch. Everybody has the after lunch slump, I guess. They're probably a bit tired after the morning. So let me introduce myself. My name is Brian King. I'm actually your neighbor. I live next door in Slovenia, in the lovely town of Novo Mesto. I've been living in Slovenia for 13 years. Govorim slabo slovensko. Today I'll be speaking in English, not Croatian. So I work on the participation team at Mozilla, also known as the community building team. So my job is basically to support our volunteer communities around the world. We have fantastic, passionate, dedicated volunteers around the world who do all sorts of things for Mozilla. They write code, they do marketing, they do social media, they answer questions on our support forum, they localize our products, and so on. So we've had a lot of successes engaging volunteers and contributors around the world. We've also had a lot of challenges as well, and we continue to have challenges. So I'm going to talk about them today. So, I'm preaching to converted here. Open has won. You all know that. I'm not going to read through all these statistics. The possible exception is desktop, right? Where we know Linux hasn't really grabbed a huge market share. But practically everywhere else on the, in the computing stack, Linux, open source code has taken over. So, no big surprises there. But has it really? I think, obviously one of the biggest software companies in the world is also one of the most closed companies in the world, not just in terms of source code, but in terms of their whole culture. So, for every success story, there's also one not so successful story in the tech sector. We're also living in a very social, open world, right? The internet has brought us social media in recent years. We share more and more of ourselves online. People are opening up their lives to other people all across the world. So I would argue that, in a sense, the world has become more open as well. I wouldn't put that down to the open source movement per se, but just the internet. The internet has opened up a whole new range of possibilities there. But is the world more open? I would ask you to think about that question. One statistic that would go against that is that press freedom has actually been on the decline for 10 years. And here's a chart here, which you may or may not be able to see. I'd urge you to check it out. It's from an organization called Freedom House. And they published earlier this year a report called Freedom in the World 2015. So overall freedom in the world, like I'm talking about freedoms, this, personal freedoms, societal freedoms, and so on, has actually declined year over year since 2004, when it peaked. So, we're geeks, we're online all the time, we're on social media all the time. I think we kind of live in this bubble, right? Whereas there's a lot of people throughout the world who actually live in a very, very different reality, internet or not. There's a lot of dictatorships cracking down across the world. Our own governments are spying on us. I don't know about the Croatian government. Maybe I have a conversation with a few of you afterwards and you can tell me some stories about that. But there's certainly a lot of governments spying on their citizens. But as I said, we live in this bubble. We read TechCrunch every day. There's companies being funded for $10 billion US and so on. And, our perception could be a little bit different. So at Mozilla, we're the only browser vendor, basically. who is able to put the user first. You know, we're not driven by the same things that our competitors like Google, Apple, and all the other browser vendors, Microsoft. You know, they're driven by shareholder value, basically. They have to give value to their shareholders. And all decisions made in companies like that is determined with that end result in mind. As a nonprofit, we don't have to worry about, so we can make decisions based on users, what we're hearing from users, the features that users we think value and that differentiates us from other browser vendors. So, you know, people do, despite the world being more open, despite all these controversies, around that, I think people do care about privacy. You know, and we bake that into our products. You know, I'm just listing a couple of features, recent ones here, HTTP2, a more secure web page loading. We have a video feature called Firefox Hello. It has a technology called perfect forward secrecy, which means that if a session is compromised, that you can't access any of the previous sessions. So these are just a couple of examples of privacy features that we bake into our product. And we think about, you know, we get up every day and we think about that. We think about what is the experience that the user wants online? How can we protect the data of our users? How can we protect our privacy? And so on. So, you know, I'd sum it up by saying this, you know, technology does not better the world. People do. And it always was the case, and it's always going to be the case. It's how we use the technology that really shapes the world. So I'm just going to go through a few things that we do at Mozilla. Talk about some of our products, talk about our community, give you an idea of the direction we're headed in, and then tie it all back to, you know, broader trends, I would say, in society. So, you know, we've had a lot of successes with the open web. You know, it's kind of a controversial phrase. Everybody thinks it's this fuzzy thing. But, you know, there's threats every day to the open web. I'll talk about them in a minute. But some of the things we've had successes with, I've mentioned HTTP2. You know, the web has become a first-class gaming platform. There's great technologies built into the web now. WebGL, ASM.js, really fantastic technologies. Web virtual reality we're working on. You can try that out in the nightly version of Firefox. You know, audio, open audio and open video. You know, WebRTC is implemented in most modern browsers nowadays. So that's a great step in the right direction. You know, HTML5 is moving towards standardization. Open H.264 codec. You know, we've been working on that in association with Cisco to open up that closed proprietary codec. So every time we're confronted with something that threatens the web, proprietary technologies on the web, we always push back and we always build alternatives to that. You know, we think the web stack should remain open from top to bottom. All protocols on the web should be open, all technologies, because that gives the best experience. It gives the best experience for users, gives the best experience for developers, gives the best experience for those who are building on the web. So since I work with community, I'll just talk a little bit about that. You know, at Mozilla, we're known for our volunteer community around the world. It's kind of our secret sauce, and I think it is, obviously, for a lot of open source projects, right? You know, we do some crazy things. You know, back in 2004, when Firefox 1.0 was released, you know, we were taking on Microsoft, who had 98% browser share at that time. The browser market was stagnant. Microsoft wasn't innovating. When you have 98% market share, why would you do anything, right? But we said, you know, this isn't right. You know, there's much more potential to the web. So we put out Firefox, and you know, and I think, you know, our goal was never to become the #1 browser vendor. You know, we just wanted to bring competition back into the space. And that's what we're trying to do, again, with Firefox OS. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But without our community, we couldn't do it. Without people who are writing code every day, without people who are going and talking about Mozilla every day, without people sharing our stuff on social media, marketing our products, right across the board, we have tons of contribution opportunities. There's a table outside. You'll meet a few of our Mozilla Croatia community members who are doing fantastic work every day as well. So without them, basically, we'd be nothing, and we couldn't do the crazy things that we do. We can't compete with, with our competitors in terms of dollars. We can't compete with them in number of staff, and so on. So community is the only way we do that. We have certain programs that we've built out over the years. A couple of them include, Mozilla Reps. Mozilla Reps is where you can really step up and become official representative of Mozilla, talk about Mozilla to the press, talk at conferences, and so on in your country. We also have our Firefox student ambassadors. So they're just a couple of programs we've built out. If we want to do a big push, say we want to do a big marketing push, we're able to mobilize thousands of volunteers around the world. This is from November, when Firefox 10th anniversary. We had a huge push globally. The theme was Choose Independent. There's the other hashtag, then Firefox OS. What we asked people to do is we asked everybody around the world to go to this landmark in their city or where they live and take a picture with a Firefox t-shirt on or with a Firefox logo and post it on social media. And that really built up a great groundswell of momentum. We had great success with that campaign. So, we're able to mobilize our volunteers around the world with campaigns like that. Mozilla is not just about our products. At our core, it's our mission that drives us. Everything else, our products, everything else we do, really, the end result is our mission. That's what drives our mission. We're best known for Firefox, but we work a lot in the education space as well, in the web literacy space, and we have a program called WebMaker, which is a set of tools for learning how to create for the web. We think that everybody, not just geeks like us here in the room, but everybody should be able to understand the web, to know the web, to be able to control their online experience, and so on. Like, I learned the web by doing view source. Like, I was a coder for many years, and I'm sure a lot of you did here too, but I think that culture is dying, right? Do modern browsers even have a view source button? I don't know. You definitely won't find it on a mobile phone, right? So we really, we don't want the web to become a place where you just consume stuff, where you just go to an app store and download apps, where you just download movies and music. We want the web to continue to be a place, a generative place, where you create, where you understand, and where you're really in control of your online experience. So we've had a lot of successes, but there's always challenges. Every day we're faced with challenges. I talked earlier about the open web, but then there's the not so open web. Technologies like social sign-on, with social companies wanting to track your movements around the web, you sign into various websites. We believe that to be a big threat to the open web. We believe in a more federated and less centralized sign-on system for the web. We did do some experiments around that with Mozilla Persona, but I wouldn't say we abandoned it, but we put that on pause for the moment. We're still trying to figure out the right thing to do there. So when we see a challenge, we take it on. We have successes, we have failures. Net neutrality, of course, is a huge threat, continues every day. I don't know the story here in Croatia, if any legislation has been put before Parliament to threaten net neutrality. I'm sure in some form or other. DRM, of course. The latest is HTML5 DRM for playing video on the web, such as Netflix. At Mozilla, we've had to make a compromise on that. It's a long story why we've had to compromise that. If anybody wants to talk about that more, please approach me afterwards. I'm willing to have a conversation about that. But we're pushing that all the time. When we're faced with challenges like these, we're going to talk to companies, we're going to talk to standards bodies, we go to talk to other browser vendors, and we really push back and we'll say, here's an alternative. Okay, we have DRM here. What's the alternative? Can we work towards that? So we're, we might lose some battles in the near term, but, we're in this for the war for the long term. And I think the mobile web is really similar to how desktop was 15 years ago, right? With proprietary technologies, with, locked into one solution. Those days it was a Microsoft solution. It's basically a duopoly now in the mobile, Android and iOS. There are others, right, but they don't have significant market share. And the web experience on those phones, we don't think is the best web experience for you. We have our Android Firefox browser, and coming this summer, we also have a browser for iOS. We've held off for a long time for having Firefox on iOS because we couldn't put our browser engine, Gecko, on it. But that's another place where we really said, can we bring Firefox values to users there, even if we don't have our browser engine? And the answer is yes, we can. So I mentioned mobile web, Firefox OS. I'm sure you've all heard of it at this stage. This is our mobile operating system. The next 2 billion people coming online are coming online on a mobile device. They won't have seen a laptop. They won't have seen a desktop computer. So this will be their first experience of the web. And we want to give them a first-class web experience. We want it to be a simple experience, and we want to have a great value proposition. Not everybody coming online in India, in Brazil, and so on can afford a new iPhone, can afford a new Android phone. Even the cheapest Android phone, the Android One devices are, $100, and it's quite significantly expensive in a lot of developing markets. Last year, we released a $30 smartphone in India. So we want to kind of give a great smartphone experience at a great value point without compromising. And we've had some challenges as well in scaling our community. You see, a lot of pictures of our communities around the world smiling and doing great things and at events, but they make a lot of sacrifice. We come across a lot of challenges every day. Here's just a few of them. In the early days, we could rely on organic growth. People really got behind Firefox. It was, the poster child for open source projects. But we can't rely on that anymore. We have to be more purposeful about community building. Why is that? Because there's a lot of competition for, the hearts and minds of people around the world. There's a lot of worthy open source projects. People are busy with their lives, with their jobs, with their families, and so on. So we've really, over the last, I'd say 3 to 4 years, reevaluated how we work with community from the ground up and been much more purposeful about it. Long gone are the days when someone would just, stumble in and start writing code. It does still happen, but it's less common than it used to be. We really have to try and engage people. Building the right tools is challenging as well. It's kind of hard to measure our community. On our community directory, Mozillians.org, we have, I think, about 8,000 globally vouched Mozillians. There are many thousands more who are unvouched. But we don't think that's the right measure. We think there's thousands and thousands more around the world working for Mozilla, but we don't have a way to measure or to capture all their work at the moment. We can capture things like coding contributions, because you can look at data from check-ins in repositories. We can capture social media participation, for example, but there's a lot of other contributions that we can't capture. Marketing is one of them, going and talking at events. So we're trying to build out the tools there, A, to best support our community, and B, to measure the impact that they are actually having. We invest a lot in our community, and we want to ensure that they're having the optimal impact. Community conflicts is common. I'm sure all of you who work on open source projects have come across them, right? Whether it's flaming wars on mailing lists, whether it's personal conflicts, and so on. So as our communities grow, we've had to put processes in place to deal with community conflicts. We have some contribution areas where what we call the bus factor, where there's maybe 1 or 2 people who we rely on to do crucial work. And if they were hit by a bus, we've no backup. So we really have started to think about how do we build strength and depth in our communities. Multiple communication channels is I put it down as a challenge. The Mozilla ecosystem is kind of like a fire hose. You've got things coming at you from all over the place. And it is kind of hard to, at the start anyway, to become involved in the community. It is a bit overwhelming. So we're trying to ease that pain as well. And then there's legal issues as well. In certain areas where we, yes?
How do you do that to ease up on this overwhelming number of communication?
Good question. Basically, we just make it known that we're pushing out core communications and crucial communications through a subset of channels. And we kind of make sure everybody tries to get signed up to those channels. Yeah. Yeah, that's right, yeah. So we have like official channels and then unofficial channels where people can hang out and do their thing as well. So I think our main channels are IRC, but that's been since day one at Mozilla. Mailing lists, and we're now using a new tool called Discourse. It's a web forums tool, and that's a great project. It's open source. It's easy to set up an instance, and we're trying to have more and more conversations there. It's a pretty good tool. We also do a lot. A challenge we're having now, and I think a lot of open source projects having, is more and more projects are using video and doing video calls, and there can be an accessibility issue in certain parts of the world with low bandwidth, for example. So I'd urge you, if you're working with people globally, to kind of think carefully about your video strategy, because bandwidth can be an issue. And then legal issues, we'd love, like, just one area is IT, right? We'd love more contributors in that area, maintaining our servers, looking after accounts, et cetera, et cetera. But we have run into legal issues there because we actually are registered as a corporation, and there's certain rules about that, volunteers can't access data on our servers. So again, we're pushing back. We're trying to find ways around it, but from time to time, we do come across legal issues. We'll talk about a couple of other things that you may or may not have heard about Mozilla. Search. So at the moment, as you know, we make a majority of our revenue via search deals. Obviously the high profile one for a long time was with Google. Last year we switched to an exclusive deal in North America with Yahoo. We no longer partner with Google, although Google is still default in many countries around the world. But and then we also partner in Russia with Yandex and with Baidu in China, and a couple of other partners as well. So, when that happens, I think there was mixed opinion with that. A lot of our users said, "What, Yahoo? Yahoo still does search?" Like 10 years ago they had search, right? Like nobody even knew Yahoo still had a search product. And those who knew said, "But it's no good, right? Google is great. Why should we be giving users, a suboptimal product experience in our browser?" But we did it for 2 reasons, I think. One reason is to bring back the idea of choice and competitive. Google basically has a monopoly in the search industry, right? So what if we opened up more choice to our users via a choice that we made in our product? The second reason why is because we got commitments from Yahoo that they would improve their search product. So we're working on a daily basis, giving feedback to Yahoo on the experiences that our users have, and that's being fed back into the product, and it's being improved every day. So this is going to really, we think, liven up the search and make it competitive again. Well, that's our hope anyway, right? But there's also other great search providers such as DuckDuckGo, for example, Bing, and various others that we do partner with in various ways. That's what we're doing around search at the moment. We're also trying to diversify our revenue, right? We don't want to have all our eggs in one basket, i.e. in search deals. So we are dipping our toes a little bit with advertising. Very, very controversial for Mozilla. We agonized about this. The community had debates. There were fights. It was like, oh my God, Mozilla, how can you do this, advertising? But the reality is, we've been doing advertising since the start. Every time you type in that search box at the top of our browser, it gives you a search results page with ads all over it, right? And the revenue from those ads is going somewhere else. It's going to Google, it's going to Yahoo, it's going to whoever. So we said, why shouldn't it go to Mozilla, And at the same time, while we experiment a little bit with advertising, maybe we can do it differently. Maybe we can do advertising in a less creepy way that doesn't track you, that doesn't sell your data, that doesn't build profiles of you and offer ads to you based on the profile that third-party companies around the world has. So again, it's a big, hairy challenge. It's new for us, but we're going to try it. We really want to put the user first. We want to put you first, and that's why we're doing this. And again, the reality is the web is powered by advertising, for better or worse. Without web advertising, we'd be paying for everything online, or we just wouldn't have all the services that we do. It's just a reality. So we're just trying to do it better. We're trying to do it differently. Still very, very early days. Some of you might have seen, in a new profile of Firefox, in the new tab, some tiles on it with ads on it. And in a more recent version of Firefox, we've started something called, is it suggested tiles? I think it's called suggested tiles. It might be another name. Basically where we offer ads based on your browsing history. But again, there's no tracking built in there. It's all anonymized. No data being moved around or sold anywhere or anything like that. So watch for more on that. Another area where we've had challenges in recent years is winning the hearts and minds of developers. I'm sure a lot of you in the room are developers. I'm not going to do a show of hands from how many of you use Chrome. I'm not going to judge. But the reality is we lost a lot of users to Chrome, especially the last few years. And one of the reasons was because Chrome had first-class developer tools. But again, we fought back, and we think we're on a par now. We have first-class developer tools. Before there was Firebug, and a few years ago, we started building tools into Firefox. And we're pretty happy to the point we've got to. We've got some great tools in Firefox now. If you are using Chrome for developer tools now, I urge you, to check out Firefox. Try it out. Let us know what you think. We think we offer a pretty competitive offering there. And we also have a browser, the Firefox Developer Preview browser. It used to be the Aurora browser, but we rebranded it. And that has some extra bits and pieces built in for developers. So if you're a developer, I urge you to download that version of Firefox and try it out. And one nice feature that went live recently is remote debugging. So you can actually, from Firefox, you can debug other browsers. You can debug desktop browsers, such as Chrome and Safari. And you can also debug mobile browsers directly from desktop Firefox. So that's a pretty cool feature if you're a web developer and you need to test your stuff on different browsers, both mobile and desktop. And of course, Mozilla is more than just open source. We do everything in the open, or we try to do everything in the open, right? But it's not always easy. We're open by default. We think that's good. So where other communities, where other companies are closed, we're open by default. There's a real diversity, as in all across society, globally. Everything we do is worked on by our communities all over the world. There's not one part of the world that isn't touched by Mozilla contributors. I mentioned earlier the fire hose. You know, it can be overwhelming trying to get a handle on doing something in Mozilla because there's just so much information. Working with partners has been very challenging, especially in Firefox OS. The mobile industry is a very locked down, a very closed industry. And we've been releasing phones with companies like Telefonica, Deutsche Telekom, Telenor, and most recently in Africa, Orange. Orange are releasing phones in 20 countries across, Firefox OS phones across the Middle East and Africa. And we've had to be more closed than we would like working with those partners because, you know, they don't want to release launch dates, they don't want to release specs about the phone, they just want to lock everything down until, you know, launch date. And that's been particularly challenging, especially for our volunteers. And then the ugly, you know, not enough time, you know, lack of commitment in some areas, too many meetings, you know, you all know all the challenges that can happen working in the open. But, you know, we strive to be more open every day. And, you know, it's never been easier to start a business, to bootstrap, to get started with open tools and open technology. You know, if you want to start a business, you can start it with just yourself and, you know, a few open source projects. Whereas 10, 20 years ago, you might have required, you know, a couple of million euros and 200 square meters office space. So I think all the open source tools that we've built, the open web, all the technologies really enable us to do more. I think there's been a trade-off to that, though. I use the example of Instagram versus Kodak. You know, Kodak was a global company with tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people employed around the world. You know, and a photography company like Instagram took over the world with, what, 20 employees? And Kodak basically their photo division went out of business. So that's the disruption that's happening in many, many industries across the world created by the internet, created by technology. And I don't think we know how to deal with that yet, right? Obviously, there's a global recession, but I think the consequences of this we don't quite understand yet, you know, as technology. You know, it's exciting, things change, it is a necessary evolution, but I don't think we fully understand the consequences yet. I think we need to make some sort of new social contract around that, about how technology enables society. Very quickly, you know, there's some cool hardware stuff going on with Firefox OS. Here's another couple of examples. You know, Yan OS is a customized Firefox OS image where you can build Internet of Things devices. It's pretty cool. You just take out the chip from a mobile phone, and it's more powerful than Raspberry Pi, I believe. Matchstick is a kind of a Chromecast-like device. It's a USB device or HDMI device that you plug in and do streaming into your TV. And up on the right there, that's actually an image of a TV. Panasonic released this month in Europe and Asia TVs running Firefox OS. So that's pretty cool. And that was with little guidance from our engineers, from our community. Panasonic just took our code and said, we think Firefox OS is cool. We're going to put the web, you know, great web experience on our TVs. So I think there's going to be a lot of great other hardware and devices enabled. I'll go back to, any of you hear of the clothesline paradox? No? Okay. Well, I'll try and explain it. I urge you to look it up afterwards. So it's the idea that basically there's some things you know, in the economic chain that you can't measure, so you don't understand the impact that it has on that industry. So a great example is the clothes dryer versus the clothesline, right? So if you're drying clothes in a clothes dryer, you can measure the amount of electricity it uses, you know, the amount of, I don't know, other materials that are needed for that. But if you hang your clothes out on the line, you can't measure that. It's just the sun, right? I think open source is like that. Open source, you can apply the clothesline paradox to that. Because many companies, many people take open source and they plug it into their products, they plug it into their processes, they plug it into their systems. And because it's free and because it's open, you can't measure its impact, right? So I think open source is punching above its weight. It's contributing millions, if not billions, to many industries across the world without being measured. It really has, you know, as I said earlier, open has won. You know, and if you're doing, I urge you, if you're doing cool stuff with open source, which I'm sure most of you are, I urge you, you know, this is based on a post again by Tim O'Reilly from O'Reilly Media. You know, I think he comes up with some really fantastic ideas and some really great stuff. So he wrote a post a few years ago called Work on Stuff That Matters, and he was kind of talking about how the global economic recession and crisis was caused by people who take more value out of the economy than they give, okay? So his 3 tips are, you know, it's okay if you want to make money. You know, we all need to make money, of course. It's okay if you want to be a millionaire. That's fine. Go and do it. But build something great, right? Don't do it just for the money. Be passionate about it. Create more value than you capture. That's crucial. You know, let's build a sustainable society together. And I think all of you working in open source kind of understand that. I don't need to tell you that. You know, we're giving back every day. Every line of code we write, even if we use open source projects, you know, we're giving back every day. So I urge you to continue with that. And, you know, take the long view. Don't be in it for the, you know, the quick payout. Build products that matter to people's lives, that really make a difference. And don't be in it to get out quick. You know, build real value. That's certainly what we're trying to do at Mozilla. And you might remember this hashtag going viral back in March, I believe, when the ironically titled Internet Freedom Act, I think it was called in the US, basically the Anti-Net Neutrality Act was defeated in the US. But I don't think we've won the internet yet. I think, you know, there's challenges every single day to net neutrality. There's challenges every single day to the open web. So please help us. If you use Firefox, you're helping us. If you're contributing code, you're helping us. If you're telling your friends about Mozilla and our mission, you're helping us. If you're working on any open source project, not Mozilla, you're kind of fighting that battle with us. So let's keep going, and that's it. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you very much. We are a little bit late. Maybe some quick questions? No? Yes?
Have you ever think about Mozilla search engine?
I would say yes. Like, I haven't been involved in any of those discussions myself, but I'm sure we did consider it. Yeah, it's not our core competence, right? Yeah, you could argue things like advertising are not our core competence either, and we're trying it. So the answer is, at the moment, no. Would we consider it? Maybe. You know, we're getting more and more now into cloud computing. So we have content services, Firefox accounts, and we'll be offering a bunch of services around, online services around Firefox accounts. So, you know, certainly don't quote me on that or anything. The answer is no. Definitely no, but who knows in the future? Who knows what might happen? Yeah. Any other question?
Okay. If there are more questions, thank you very much. And yeah, cool.